And if we don't cover your area, we can always refer you to someone wonderful who does. Yeah, so I've been doing this for a little over 10 years. I've had my business. I work mostly with urban dogs because that's where I was trained and what my expertise is. And yeah, and I work with anywhere from puppies who just need basic training and basic obedience, all the way to, like separation anxiety and more sort of complicated behavior issues. So I'm very excited to speak with you guys and hear your questions.
Thank you. So, as Alexa said, she's going to speak to a lot of the things that people have been seeing since even COVID has started and like pandemic puppies. And then we're going to have a pretty good chunk of time to directly ask any questions that you have or that you've been dealing with your dog or puppy. So we did ask for questions in advance and we have a whole list, but I don't know if any of you were at our panel event. It was really awesome to like hear what people were thinking and the questions that they had live. So if you have live questions, you can put them in the chat and then we'll invite you to unmute and ask them. And then Jamie, do you want to give a quick introduction to Dog Spotted for anybody who is new?
Yeah, hi. Hi, everyone. So many familiar faces, new faces, both human and dog, and I live for it, especially on National Puppy Day. So thank you so much for coming on this Tuesday night. I'm super excited to have Alexis here from Zen Dog Training. So Dog Spotted, for those that are unfamiliar, is a website and community for the dog parent. And it was really founded on the thought of having an approachable website that has expert advice with that kind of knowledgeable best friend tone. We only launched the website about a month ago. If you haven't checked it out, you should. It's dogspotted.com. And we are loving the community, the questions, the pictures. And we plan to only grow and offer more resources for you guys and help small businesses and trainers and walkers and vets. So if there's ever anything that you have a question about or want us to do, we are open to it. We've done it before. The challenge was a suggestion from someone and we did it in January. So if you have something that you'd love to learn or meet or know, let us know and we will do our best to get it done. So that's me. I'm the founder. My daughter Lucy just went out on her walk. So I will now turn it back to Alexis to talk about socialization during this crazy time we're all living in and separation anxiety, once we all eventually have to go back to an office setting. So Alexis, take it away. Oh, Alexis, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I was muted. Okay. Yeah, so there are definitely some very specific concerns that come up with puppies during the pandemic in particular. And those are usually surrounding socialization and separation issues. Of course, there's a lot of good reasons to get a puppy during the pandemic. You're at home a lot. You have the time to sort of devote to the puppy, to training and things like that. And that's really great. But there are also some other things that sort of come up because our lifestyles are totally different. Like we're not having guests over really anymore. Hopefully that will change soon. But we've all kind of been quarantined and sort of holed up for a while, and so our puppies have too. And socialization is, if you have a puppy, it is the number one focus that you should have. Even prior to training, socialization is hugely important. Most of the behavior problems that occur later in life are a result of a gap in socialization. And there's also sort of a misunderstanding sometimes about what socialization is. So first of all, socialization is positive exposure to anything that your puppy might encounter in their daily life in New York City or wherever they live. So it's not just people and it's not just other dogs. It's everything. It's concrete, grass, stairs, umbrellas, vacuum cleaners, all sorts of stuff. It's your grooming supplies, whatever it is that you want your dog to sort of file under familiar and safe. That's what you want to expose them to, but in a positive way, meaning we don't want to just sort of like throw our puppy into the mix. We want to make sure we're observing them and making sure that that they're making positive associations with these things, because they do make associations very quickly. The other thing to remember, and this is something that it's very hard for people to believe this, but puppies seem to love everything, and they kind of do during certain developmental stages, but that doesn't mean that they're always going to love these things if you don't actively socialize them anyway. So, nature is basically giving you opportunities when your puppy is young, when they're, in their developmental socialization periods, to say, okay, your puppy is going to be more likely to have positive experiences with a broader range of things during this time period than they will later on in life. So take advantage of it now, introduce them to everything and anything, because in a little while, this window is going to close and you're going to see where the gaps are. So people think sometimes, oh, my dog loves all people, so I don't really have to focus on socializing them with people. But yes, you absolutely do, because you want to make sure that your dog will continue to love people. So that's a very common misconception. So puppies do love everything. Most puppies should love everything. It's normal for them to have some hesitations around certain stimuli as well. But regardless of whether they love things or not, we still want to make sure that they're having positive exposures to pretty much anything we can think of that they're going to come in contact with in their lives. So that's socialization. And obviously, that's a challenge during a pandemic because, up until recently, or maybe even still, it's hard to bring your puppy places in public. Places are kind of restricted. It would be nice if you could bring your dog with you everywhere you go. Service dogs, for example, guide dogs, from the day they open their eyes, they're going absolutely everywhere with their puppy raiser, to the store, to go get gas at the gas station, literally everything they want them to see and file under. That's cool, not a big deal. So later in life, when I see it, I won't worry about it. I'll focus on something else. So ideally you want to bring your puppy everywhere and meet everyone, but in a positive way. So that can be challenging at this time, but hopefully things are kind of opening up a little bit. The more vaccines we get, numbers will go down and we'll feel more comfortable kind of letting our puppies, socialize. A note about socialization with other dogs. So puppy play groups are wonderful. And actually, I am going to be doing a puppy play group at some point in the very near future because it's like dire. So many people need it. But socializing your puppy with other puppies is it's important. But even more important is socializing your puppy with well-adjusted adult dogs who like puppies. Because puppies socializing with other puppies, it's like a kid or a teenager learning how to be from other teenagers or other kids. Like they need to know how to interact with their peers, but an adult needs to tell you, okay, when you grow up, you can't act like this, or you can't do this, that, or the other thing. And other kids can't really tell them that. So puppies are the same. Adult dogs need to say, okay, this is cute now, you're a puppy. Dogs are going to give you puppy license and you'll get some get out of jail free cards, but once you're an adult dog, this will start a fight and you can't be doing that, like taking toys from dogs and things like that. So it is really important to socialize your puppy with adult dogs as well, but definitely adult dogs who enjoy socializing puppies. Because if you get an adult dog who's overly corrective because they're not really enjoying it, or an adult dog who's just kind of avoiding because they're not super into it, that's not really going to be a good socialization experience. But a lot of dogs really love socializing puppies. They love playing with puppies. So if you can find some of those dogs, that would be wonderful. And again, when I set up my puppy play dates, I will have several of those dogs there. So hopefully everybody will be able to come now that the weather's getting warmer. I'll definitely be setting that up hopefully soon. Okay, so by the way, Jamie or Sarah, holler at me if I have to stop talking, by the way, because I realize I haven't been keeping track of time.
You don't, but there are questions if you want to do those. I don't know if you want to do questions later about socialization or if you want to start now. I feel like maybe we could do them all at the end. I don't need to cut you off.
No, I guess let's take questions and see how, what people are actually interested in hearing about. And then if people want to hear, well, maybe we could do this. I'll start answering questions. And if I was going to also talk about separation, so like leaving your puppy alone and teaching your puppy to be by themselves. So I'll take questions. And if people want to hear about the separation stuff, just type it in the chat, talk about separation, and I'll stop and talk about that.
Yeah, that's great. And I can limit, maybe we'll just stick with a few right now and then you can keep on, because I don't want to lose the vital value that was coming from the separation too. But there is a soon to be pet parent here who is getting a puppy in a month. And sorry, I lost your name, Andrew. And Andrew was asking, is there a time frame? When do you lose that puppy stage of loving everything, if that has a specific time frame, because he's getting a puppy, so he can be aware of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So pretty much it's going to be pretty much until your puppy is about well, okay, so the first developmental socialization period is from 8 to 11 weeks. So very, very young. And if you're getting your puppy from a breeder, most breeders, they shouldn't be giving you a puppy before then. So that makes it crucial to make sure that you're getting a puppy from a breeder who is actively socializing the dog. And if the breeder says, oh, I live in a house with kids, so the dog is socialized, that's not socialization. So you want to make sure that your breeder is really doing that before they give you the puppy, because that's crucial. And then there's several other ones that occur. And I'd say the window starts to close maybe around 3-4 months, but you'll still want to socialize up until like a year, because what happens is like then things start to kind of like solidify in the puppy's mind. They start to mature. And then they have what we call a fear period, usually around 6 or 7 months, in which developmentally they're supposed to be learning, the things in this world that are not safe for them. So that is a time where you really want to protect your dog from having negative experiences, because those will impact them later. So you want to teach them that, most things are safe for them. When they're sort of like more predisposed to learning that things are not safe, if that makes sense. And then you want to continue to socialize through adolescence. And your dog, depending on, the individual dog and the breed, whatever, adolescence can last at least to a year, usually like a year and a half. For some dogs, it's till they're 2. A lot of bully breeds, they're basically teenagers till they're 2 years old. And you still kind of want to be cognizant of socialization up until they're actual adults. But I would also say that around a year and a half, you're going to start to see new behaviors crop up, because they are phasing out of puppyhood into adulthood. So things are the stakes are higher. They're responsible for their own well-being. They're not babies anymore. So, if they had a bad experience with a dog on a leash 3 months ago and you've never seen any issues up until then, at a year and a half, you could have a reactive dog. And that's normal developmentally. I mean, you'd still want to address it, obviously, but this is the reason why really careful socialization is super important. I know we have more questions, but just a note on the another thing that's really important is that vets will tell you not to bring your dog outside until 4 months of age, or some vets will, some vets don't anymore. But the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior has had a position statement for many years saying that you absolutely have got to bring your dog outside before 4 months of age. Otherwise, you are really setting them up for huge problems. It's sort of like keeping a child in a padded cell till they're 5. It's not going to be okay for them. Bring your dog outside is the point, safely though. You can actually Google that position statement if you want to read about how to safely do that, or you can email me after and I'll send you information. Okay, that was a really long answer.
That was a really great answer. And I feel like it spoke to the fact that you were already answering these questions before I paused to ask them. So thank you. But I think let's do maybe one more question and then we can keep it on because there are actually quite a few. So we'll hold the rest until later because I do want to get to everything. But on the opposite end of the questions really is it possible to change a dog's association with something when they're already past that stage? And that's from Eliza.
Yeah, so generally speaking, remedial socialization is very hard, which is why, we will harp on it till we're like blue in the face. Just socialize now, because it's very hard to go back later. But that said, it's possible. You can desensitize your dog to things as adults, as elderly dogs can be desensitized to things. It's never too far gone for your dog necessarily. But it depends on things like, biology. Like some dogs they don't bounce back the same way other dogs do, sort of like humans. Like when two humans can experience the same experience, and for one it's traumatic and the other one brushes it off for genetic reasons, or whatever. So the same is with dogs. So some dogs can be desensitized more easily than others based on a combination of factors. So it really depends, but you really want to make sure that that you're doing it in a gradual way at your dog's pace, because it's the kind of thing that you can't rush. Like you really have to go at your dog's pace. Otherwise you risk actually sensitizing them further.
Great. That's really helpful. Okay, there are a ton here, so I figure maybe we just keep on talking more about the separation anxiety that we're going to hit on too, and then we can come back for all these questions because there are quite a few.
Yeah, the separation part is definitely going to be shorter than the socialization, but dogs are naturally not happy about being separated from us. They have to be taught that it's okay, or most dogs do. And that does need to happen very early. You don't want to leave your baby puppy for very long without supervision, but you do want to start sort of at least getting them comfortable being behind a barrier, on the other side of a barrier from you, because that's sort of like the first step for separation. And you want to make sure that you're scheduling time to do this, even though a lot of us are not leaving the house at all. It's hard to kind of like do that if you're just not really naturally leaving the house. But I would recommend making sure that you prioritize that just here and there, just to make sure that your dog is comfortable with it. You could even like feed them when you're gone, so they associate you leaving with eating. And you also, a note about being on the other side of a barrier, sometimes that's actually, even though it's sort of like, it could be an intermediary step to being left completely alone, but sometimes that's actually more challenging for some dogs because they can see you, and that's frustrating. So keep that in mind as well. So you want to just do short periods of time, help guide them through it. So if they need if they need you to be a little closer by on the other side of the barrier for a little while, that's fine. And you can gradually work up to getting further and further away. But it's definitely something that needs to be addressed on the sooner side.
Super helpful. And then if anybody has questions about separation anxiety too, feel free to pop them in. with that, we can start digging into these questions if that works for you. And I will ask people to unmute, and it'd be great to hear from you directly your questions. So, Andrew, we just answered yours, and we answered Eliza's. Um, so this is specific to socialization. And I think it was when you were talking about socializing with full-grown dogs. Priscilla and Kenzo, would you like to unmute to ask your question?
Sure. We're thinking of looking for some puppy socialization classes, and some trainers say that it's totally okay for him to be interacting with large dogs, especially since he's only 3 pounds right now, so he's still a little one. But we've been looking for, I guess, petite or small size dogs for him to interact with, and I'm wondering if it matters if we introduce him to large dogs first in the beginning of socialization and then try to mix it up later, or what your thoughts are.
Yeah, that's a good question, because the answer is it depends. So he definitely needs to be familiar with large dogs so that he's not freaked out by them later. He needs to not be scared of them. So it is important for him to socialize with larger dogs, but he's 3 pounds, you said?
Yes, he's 3 pounds, and I've noticed he's a little bit more hesitant than previous dogs that I've had. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely he should socialize with larger dogs, but there is a danger there if the larger dog is a little bit rambunctious or doesn't have much proprioception or idea of where their body is in space. They could potentially hurt him. So you really want to vet those larger dogs, but it is definitely a really good idea. My dog is like an expert puppy raiser. I've had people with really, really tiny dogs just give them to me for like, a couple weeks or a month or something, and they just get used to him, and he's huge. So you can definitely find large dogs who are gentle, have soft mouths. Definitely make sure you know the owners, and you're very comfortable that that they've seen them around small dogs before and things like that.
Awesome. Thanks.
Sure.
And then the next 2 questions we have are actually very similar. So Brittany and Sinatra were asking, or Brittany for Sinatra, or on behalf of Sinatra, was asking if they can revert in behavior since COVID. And then Ana Lucia, if you would, because it's a bit longer, if you'd like to unmute and kind of say your story with Ollie, I think it's very similar and would have a similar response.
Yeah, so we got Ollie like 2 weeks before the pandemic hit. And at first, we were able to socialize him. He would go out to outdoor restaurants with us, kayaking. But then once the winter months came by, it was harder to socialize, and people were taking more precautions, so people wouldn't come over and say hi to him. It felt like he was okay, good with socialization and other dogs and people. And then all of a sudden he just started doing this like weird screeching, barking thing where if someone wouldn't come over to say hi, whether it was a dog or a person, he would just kind of like lose it. And I think from what the trainers have told us, is he's so excited to go say hi to someone that whenever they, don't come over, he kind of just gets really frustrated. So it seems like we've tried everything with group training, one-on-one training, different treats, different clickers. So I don't know like what else to try, or if you recommend anything. At this point, I think we're gonna try like daycare and see if that kind of helps him see other people and other dogs outside of being with us. But I don't know if there's something else we should try or look at.
Yeah, so that definitely sounds like a frustrated greeting. And just to answer quickly, if you can see like regressions in behaviors from COVID, for sure, some dogs are really sensitive to changes in routine, and they're used to different things when you're home all the time, and they're not seeing as many people. Seeing a person can be like a like a huge contrast to their normal, life. So yeah, these things can either sensitize dogs to those things that they don't see very much of anymore, like people, or they can experience stress from changes in routine and they don't understand what's going on. And that can certainly change behavior for sure. Ana Lucia, in terms of your dog, I would say, how sudden was it? Because, and I don't think this is what it is, but just to be thorough, I would say that if it was really indeed a sudden behavior change and you can't point to anything else that's really occurred to cause it, the rule of thumb is to get a vet workup to make sure there's nothing medical going on. But if it's a frustrated greeting where he's just really excited about seeing people and gets, just loses his marbles because he wants to say hi so badly, basically what you would want to do is you want to teach him an alternative behavior that's just as exciting that he can perform with you that doesn't entail screeching and trying to get to that person. That's the simple way to put it. How you do that, you can use food, you can use motion. So if food's not working, you can sometimes do, sometimes what I do is this way cue. So like as soon as the dog sees the trigger, you say this way and you just run the other direction and they chase you and you have a nice little chase fun game so that every time they see the trigger, it activates this really fun game that they think of when they see the trigger as opposed to what their behavior was. It depends how often that trigger comes up. Obviously, if it's a person, you can't do that every time you see a person. But yeah, it would be something that a trainer would have to observe and see what the best way to go about it is. I would probably start with just feeding him when he sees people. You said you mentioned treats. If he's not interested in the treats or if the treats aren't working, then I would look at his relationship with food. So how much is he eating? How much access does he have to his food? Because when people say my dog's not food motivated, 99% of the time we can just shift his eating their eating habits, not necessarily reduce their food at all, but shift their eating habits so that they value their food more and you can use it as a tool more, because it is a really good tool for teaching alternative behaviors. So that's not a super specific answer, but yeah, that's basically what you would want to do. And really, I would need a more thorough information to give you more specific advice, but hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And then this actually came up as a potential solution, but Natasha had a question about puppies in daycare. Natasha, do you want to unmute?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I just had a question about daycare, and obviously you don't know what they're not exactly vetted adult dogs, but is that a beneficial environment for puppies to learn from? Are there any, if an adult dog has negative characteristics, I guess, or bad behavior, is that adversely helpful for dogs? Yeah, I think those are a couple of my questions about.
So if a dog if an adult dog has behaviors that are not good towards other dogs, is it good to put them in daycare?
Yeah, just in general, because you don't know what the environment at dog daycare is. It's hard to socialize my puppy with other adult dogs because a lot of the people I meet have puppies as well, so we're all kind of in the same timeline. But yeah, I'm curious if all adult dogs are better, or obviously there are some that are better than, or more well behaved than others, but I guess in general.
Daycare a solution. So here's the thing about daycare. I'm not a fan of it generally. That's not to say that there aren't really great daycares out there. But it's very, very hard to turn a profit with a daycare business with the amount of staff and space that you would need to make it a behaviorally safe environment. that basically means that there's usually not enough staff. The staff isn't usually trained very well to know how and when to intervene. It's an enclosed space, which is particularly tense for adult dogs. Dogs are social animals, but because they evolved in such close quarters with other animals and other dogs, they're very sensitive to tension and conflict, potential conflict. So adult dogs actually don't like to be in a position where their movement is restricted with other adult dogs, because they don't know that adult dog. They don't know if a conflict might occur, and dogs diffuse tension by giving and taking space. So if they know they can't really give and take space, they're in a room or they're on leash or something, then they're going to be more tense, because they're going to be like, uh-oh, if something happens, I don't have all the tools at my disposal to diffuse this conflict. So adult dogs in daycare are generally tense. And also, like, dogs end up practicing behaviors like bullying, ganging up on dogs, and it doesn't necessarily look like, if you don't know what you're supervising, you can be supervising a very uncomfortable situation for dogs. So, and if your dog is bullied, they could learn to be a bully, or they could learn to be reactive to other dogs when they see them on leash, things like that. So I would not do it. I find that 99% of the time it's the opposite of socialization. But that said, you know, there are daycare situations that I've seen that, because of the pandemic, they're very sparse. Like, there's a lot of space and very few dogs. I don't expect that'll continue, but that you could look for a situation like that. But I'd honestly rather you go to the dog park on off hours when there's not that many dogs there and see who's there, if it works out one-on-one, as opposed to like these large groups of basically unsupervised dogs, if that makes sense. I don't know if any of you live near Central Park or Prospect Park, but if you put your puppy on like a 30-foot leash, and just let them interact in those situations, that's much healthier, because those dogs can see your puppy, say hi, and they can leave if they want to. Those dogs are a lot more relaxed. The owners tend to be a lot more tuned in, because their dog's off leash. So I would recommend maybe something a little more like that, to maybe like meet dogs that your dog gets along with. If that makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you think you need to stay with an adult dog overnight to like really learn? Not like, my dog's very social, but I mean, just picking up good habits, like you probably need like a longer stay with.
I mean, it depends. I think like repeated exposures, even if they're just like an hour or so, or even half an hour, I think that's fine. But yeah, like, I mean, if you can do an overnight with an adult dog that you know is going to be good for your puppy, that would be great too. But I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And for anyone who didn't see it, I think Jamie put in a link to some New York City area. Sorry, I'm at a loss for words because my cat came in. Dog parks. So if you want to go, there's a list to get you started outside of Central and Prospect Park if you are not close. Okay, so next question is from Samantha. Samantha, do you want to unmute?
Hello. So my question, I guess, is kind of on the same lines. We have an 8-month-old puppy who, from a very young age, I've been socializing with other dogs, with other people. She's very comfortable in most situations with other dogs. She plays very well individually with other dogs, bigger than her or smaller. She's 12 pounds now. There she is. And when we take her to dog parks, she gets very nervous. She won't really run around, and she does love running in open spaces and backyards when we've taken her to our family's homes. But when we take her to a dog park, even if it's not super busy on an off hour, she gets really freaked out, and she will tend to stand right by us. If another dog comes up to her, she'll be friendly, but not super friendly, and she won't really run around. It also will get to a point then where she'll like hide under the bench, or she'll hide between our legs or something. But like I said, when she's with a dog just one-on-one, even a dog that doesn't want to play with her, she can't like get enough. So how do you help kind of manage that disconnect between those two situations?
Yeah, that's actually not a very uncommon thing. Dog parks can be really overwhelming for dogs, especially if they're on the smaller side. Even if there's not a lot of dogs there at the moment, there's so many smells of other dogs that it could just be a little too much for her. And if your dog doesn't like dog parks, a lot of dogs are not dog park dogs, and that's totally fine. If she's more into like one-on-one or just small, like a small group, then I would just focus on facilitating that for her. Because if she just doesn't enjoy dog parks, there's no reason why she needs to. I just feel like it would probably be a better use of your time and energy to put, to focus on other things that would be better for her. If that makes sense. So I would take that pressure off yourself and off of her, because it's totally fine.
Well, thanks.
Sure.
And then Jessica had a question about adopting an adolescent dog. Jessica, do you want to unmute?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so I'm struggling with a dog that's adopted as an adolescent. He's about 1. So he's kind of in between the puppy stage, and he's a larger breed, and you can probably hear him in the background. So he's doing really well with a lot of things, but he's still very overstimulated in environments. And taking him to the dog park, he's still getting acclimated. And for instance, today he's very submissive, but he got attacked in the dog park this morning. And I think it's because he's over submissive. So it's a struggle between getting him acclimated to a new environment, but in a safe way where he feels safe.
Yeah. Oh, that's too bad. I'm so sorry. I hope he's okay. I hear him in the background, so maybe that indicates that he's doing okay. But yeah, so the question is so is the question sort of how to keep him comfortable around other dogs despite
I guess it's more like how to deal with a dog that's kind of in between a puppy and an adult, and getting them to a place, especially when you don't know where they've come from and you don't know what their situation was. Because like having a puppy from start to finish, you kind of can progress them through and you know where they've come from and you know like what you're exposing them to. But having a dog that you don't know what they've been exposed to and trying to get them acclimated.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So in that case, I would just follow Socialization Guidelines 101 still. You still don't want him to have, negative experiences with things that he's going to be, living with. Some dogs, a lot of these rescue dogs are coming up from the South, which is New York is like the surface of the moon compared to like North Carolina. So maybe they were socialized where they were and not so much now because they weren't socialized to the city. And you have no idea what he was socialized to or not. I don't know if you know where he came from, but you basically would want to just like make sure that you are treating all of his experiences as potential socialization experiences. And I would actually, if you email me or DM me on Instagram, I can send you some material on dog body language.
Okay.
You become like really, really good at observing him. You'll know his like early stress signs, which can be very, very subtle. And a lot of times, even people who've had dogs their whole lives don't know about some of these stress signals. And then once they start to look for them, they're like, oh, wow, my dog does that a lot and I just didn't notice, and it makes so much sense. So I would recommend just really getting very familiar with dog body language, really becoming very observant of him, and making sure that he's always sort of like below threshold in terms of his stress levels when he's exposed to especially other dogs, and things like that, or anything that kind of freaks him out. So in order for a dog to be desensitized, they have to start off at a place of comfort. And then you kind of want to expand that comfort level to include some of their triggers here and there very gradually. So like, for example, if I'm scared of spiders, in order to desensitize me to spiders, I might have to be like, 50 feet away from the spider at first. And then someone can like hold my hand and like, help me maybe get closer to the spider slowly by, step by step, as opposed to just sort of like throwing me in like a room full of spiders or something. And, so you really want to make sure that he's 50 feet away from that spider, if you know what I mean, to the extent that you can. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So we are actually at our time for questions, but I think if it's okay with you, Alexis, I'd love to get one or two in on socialization, and then we'll just cut our little exit piece that we have for Dog Spotted. Does that sound okay, or what do you think?
Totally fine.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna just scooch down to some questions that are specific to that. So Lauren, do you want to talk about your experience with Poppy?
Yeah, hi there. So I think I started off in the wrong spot with her in terms of like the small increments, because I'm raising her alone, and you have to run to the store or shower and like that kind of thing. And she was very mischievous as a young one, so I had to keep her contained so she wouldn't get into trouble. So I'm just curious if and now we're working on increments, but she does whine and bark a lot when I leave. I have the camera on her, and she's 4.5 months. So I'm just curious if should I just continue with the trying to leave her in small increments and kind of restarting, almost like what you said earlier for Jessica, of starting back at the beginning and kind of start there and just try to get her out of it? Or is it too late and I'm gonna be she's not gonna be unhappy? Because I am trying to get her to a place where she does feel comfortable being alone for increments, especially as we start to potentially go back to work and all that good stuff. So curious.
Yeah, no, you're not alone. So many people that I'm working with now are in the same boat, where their dogs are 4 or 5 months and they just aren't really able to be left alone for longer periods of time. So I would just backtrack again, try to find that sub thresholds, comfort zone where, maybe she just needs to be, I don't know, if you leave her alone in a crate or something, maybe she just needs to be comfortable behind a barrier or in her crate or whatever first with you there before you can leave. The other really important thing, and this is just sort of you could do a more targeted separation anxiety protocol, which is sometimes necessary, but it's very labor intensive. So I like to try to give people little hacks first and see if that works, because sometimes it does, and you don't have to launch full on into a separation anxiety protocol. So you might want to try feeding her only when you're out of the room or gone or just not there. And if she's not super food motivated, I would start with just putting her food down, picking it up 10 minutes later, twice a day, and reducing her treats so that she starts to really enjoy her food. So that we give her food, especially if you pair it with something if she has most dogs have that mind-blowing treat like peanut butter, or I don't know, wet food sometimes for some dogs. If you make that sort of what she gets only when you're gone, that will be helpful. And one way that you can kind of really drive home that point is if you give it to her in sort of a slow delivery device, like a Kong or something like that, or a food toy or whatever. You can give it to her, leave the room, wait for her to get really into it, and then at peak interest, come back, open the gate, the crate or whatever, toss a treat out so that she runs out and pick it up. She'll be like, can I please have it back? And you'll be like, okay, you can have it back, and then you give it back and you leave, so that like she's ends up sort of being like, can you please just leave so I can have my Kong and
Yeah,
So-
because she's much better now. If I'm like, I can be in another room, I can be in, you know, she can be in the kitchen eating and I'm in the bedroom getting dressed or something. Like she's fine with that. It's when I physically leave the apartment. So I've been like trying to wear my jacket around so she gets confused. But like the minute she sees the jacket come on, it triggers that like I'm gonna be leaving, and I've given her the Kong, and sometimes that distracts her, and then all of a sudden she realizes, wait, I'm not there anymore. And it's like, so actually for the first time I just left her in the living room and watched her through the camera and just like went outside and grabbed a coffee, and she was actually okay. So I'm going to try to do that, but I was trying to keep her in more of like a safe space. Not that there's a lot for her to get into really, but I like where you're going with like the food motivation and trying to, because she is definitely food motivated.
Yeah. So there's no reason if she's not like destructive, or you're not, you know, if it's safe for her and you're not still house training, you can totally leave her out. That's totally fine. Some dogs really just don't like being confined, and if you just leave them out, they're totally fine, or they're more likely to be totally fine. If she's specifically upset about your departure cues, we call them, so like putting your coat on, putting your shoes on, picking up keys, then just like throughout the day, just like take your coat, put it on, toss some treats at her, and put it down.
Okay.
Just maybe like make a list of your departure cues and say like, oh, it's okay, like today I'm just gonna do my jacket 20 times.
Yeah. Similar to like when you know, when the sirens go by and I, you know, give her the reward, so she like associates the positive with it. So doing something similar with those triggers, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. And you're also like separating the jacket, the cue, like the jacket putting on and off with the actual departure, because you're doing it so many times a day, nowhere near your, you know, your actual departure.
Right. Okay.
No
That's
longer
great.
that. Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Yeah. It's just like, it's, you know, I feel for her. I don't want her to be upset, and, you know,
Yeah.
the neighbors probably, you know, won't be too happy after a while, but
Yeah. Well, there's plenty you can do, so I'm sure she'll be fine.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So we have about 4 minutes left. I know we didn't get to every single question. I'm happy to say it looks like Sherry had a similar experience. So I think that the answers might be there for her too in that last question. But anybody who didn't get their question answered, I'm saving all of the file of chat, the chat as a file, sorry. And I can ask Alexis if she'd have the time later to support in getting those answers out. But I do think we got the most of them. So I just wanted to say thank you, Alexis, for just like giving us that information and being like so open to all of these questions in the moment. So just to give some context, the original plan was to have some more in advance questions, but because we didn't have that, all of this was on the fly. So for you to just have all of your expertise available and accessible to everybody is just huge. And thank you so much for it.
My pleasure.
And then I guess we're just the last kind of part of this evening is sharing the winner from our giveaway today. That Riff Raff has already done the wheel. If you've been to our events before, we usually do a wheel that announces the winner, but I'm going to actually share my screen and show you the cute picture of the winner. Oh, host disabled screen sharing. So Jamie, can you either, I can send you the link or give me access to that.
You got access, girl. Sorry about
Beautiful. Sorry.
that. Also, for those that don't know what Riff Raff is, I've been obsessed with them since day one. They're Yeezys for dogs, but they're like vet approved. They have like cushioning and they're just so cool. Like the sneaker game on these dogs is stronger than my sneaker game, which I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm actually okay with it.
But it's really cool because they have such a practical use. So if you haven't been on our social today, Riff Raff did a whole day takeover and they talked about why they exist, the issues that they're solving for, and they were pet parents and how that like came about. But the winner of our shoes today is Joey Bricks.
Hi! Yay! Thank you! Yay!
Woohoo! Oh, there he is! Oh my gosh, so sweet! So congratulations! We're gonna get your information so we can get them sent over, and then once you get them, we'd love to see him in them. Like we would.
Yes, her. But we will make sure she's rocking it.
Yay!
Yay!
Thank you.
Happy day! Congrats. And then I thought I had another screen up. Let me just check. I do. Beautiful. So I'm going to also share some links. We have a survey just to see, you know, what you guys are all looking for in future events. And then also, I wrote it all down. We also have a column called Dear Mary Poppins, and it is a play on Poppins, as you might think. And we have that survey. If you ever go to our social, it's linked in there too. If you have questions that we either didn't get to tonight or you think of throughout your experiences that you want answered, we do have a trainer who supports us in getting your questions answered. So I just wanted to mention that that exists. And then I wanted to show you Riff Raff site if you haven't seen it. And then I wanted to show you what I was talking about at the beginning with the amazing Alexis and all of her training. And that's it. So I'm just going to share those links with you so I can stop sharing my screen. But just a huge thanks to everybody for being here, for asking the questions that are on your mind, and for trusting us to find the experts who have the answers for you. So again, if you have any specific topics that you want us to focus on, please email us at WOOF, fill it in the survey I'm about to share with you, or just DM us, because if you have DM'd us in the past, you'll know that we're pretty quick to respond and we love everything that we see and hear. Okay, sorry,
Thanks,
this is taking
everyone. This hour just absolutely flew by. The questions were great. I just love seeing new and old faces. So thank you again for coming, and we hope to see you at future events. Stay on top of Instagram because that's where we really promote it. And also, if you don't follow it, we have a sister account called Spot's Adoptable Friends, where we also educate about these tips as well and rescues. So that's another great place to check out information. But again, Alexis, thank you so much for just being a wealth of knowledge. I definitely learned a lot, and I hope everyone did too. So I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and hope to see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.